I want you to imagine that you are so tired that walking takes extra efforts and your steps are extra small, that you keep on hunching over because you just don't have the energy to stay upright, that your brain is confused and you have trouble thinking as a result, and your thoughts come to you slowly. Your cognitive function is lower than normal, and you're very fatigued. So low energy, poor mental capacity, and enervated. Have you ever experienced that? That's what anxiety feels like. And anxiety is a form of fear. So you could say, well, okay, how bad can it get? Depends. It depends on how your brain is reacting to it. You see, your brain decides how anxious to make you, and it's not using logic. It uses other criteria that are buried in certain parts of the brain, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with how severe the situation really is. So yeah, you could be in a dark house and you could hear people calling at you and saying, I'm going to kill you and stuff like that, and it's not a haunted house experience for Halloween. Legitimately, you're trapped in a house with killers. And you could be in a completely non-dangerous situation, but you're just so overwhelmed by what is going on that you feel the same way. I know this because, well, I have suffered from anxiety for a good portion of my life. And lately it's been pretty bad. I have several things going on in my life right now that are really producing a lot of stress for me. Work-related stuff, personal stuff, having to move suddenly, scammers who are targeting people looking for places to move to, and other stuff. And it's just, and so when I have to look for an apartment, my brain, even just thinking about doing it, makes it hard to get out of bed. Just thinking about doing it when I'm in I'm in the grocery store and I start to feel anxiety. And I laugh, but it's very frustrating. Because I'm in a different building, in a different part of town. Well, maybe not so different, but. And I am stressed out, losing energy, losing clarity of thought, starting to slouch because of anxiety. And lots of things cause anxiety. I mean, you can be born with problems with anxiety. You can be abused, and that can produce anxiety. You could be in a wartime environment. That could do it. You could be a soldier. That can do it. You could be in the ER as a doctor or a nurse, and that could do it. I mean, lots of things, PTSD can cause it, post-traumatic stress disorder. So there are a lot of different things that can create anxiety in your brain. And as far as how intensely you feel it, there are lots of different variables involved in that. The problem is, again, your brain doesn't do a very good job of differentiating between types of anxiety, real and imagined, and sometimes it just takes a little bit for some people. Because the more heavily you're dealing with sources of anxiety, the more rapidly your anxiety will go up. And the types of experiences you've had and how many of them are currently affecting you, how many different sources of stress are affecting you, influences how much anxiety you feel. If you're on medications, that may make it easier or worse. Like when I was on Zoloft, I felt less anxiety than I do now. Now, my son, he takes Zoloft and he wants to kill himself. My daughter takes Zoloft and it doesn't really help her. Because everybody chemically inside is different. And the pharmaceutical companies, they just find something that works for a bunch of people, and instead of saying, well, we probably should customize it. Compounding pharmacies can customize, but you have to have somebody who knows what prescription to give, and that requires more money than the healthcare industry is willing to spend these days, because the healthcare industry has become more and more just about money, turning the healthcare experience into a factory, much to the distress of doctors and nurses who don't want to treat their patients like something they're manufacturing or repairing. Anyways, so I was walking in the grocery store. I started thinking about when I get home, I have to look for an apartment again. I've got less than a month. And the anxiety just started. I was like, whoa, I'm not home. I'm not in front of my computer. I'm not doing anything. I'm just thinking about it, and I'm freaking out a little bit here. And yesterday later, I got home, and I was in my apartment. The stress was going up. And I was like, okay, got to fight it. Because, sometimes if you push against the anxiety in the right and have the right amount of the thing that's causing the anxiety, low enough level, you can push through it. And then your brain will, after you do this enough times over and over and over again, because I used to get anxiety from doing my YouTube channels. But just, if you do it over and over and over again, your brain starts to realize, oh, I was miscategorizing that. That doesn't need any anxiety. Silly me. Sorry, Glenn. So then you're like, okay, I don't feel anxiety doing this. I have two types of anxiety. The other one is social anxiety. I figured out how to deal with that one back in my 20s. But basically it's exposure to something that makes you anxious, but at a low enough level that you can deal with it. So yesterday I was not able to push through because lots of choices makes me anxious too. And when you're looking at apartments, there are lots of choices. So I contacted my sister, and she finished work, and then she helped me. And my stress evaporated. Because I knew that even though she was just on the phone with me, she was helping me. And that made so much of a difference that I calmed down. Now, I did have some calming, soothing music with waterfall sounds in it playing in the background. And that probably played a role, but mostly it was just that somebody that cared about me enough to spend the next few hours with me and help me to look at choices. And that was amazing. Now, this morning, I am struggling with stress again because I discovered one of the places I decided I was going to apply to, well, the listing was a scam. So now, I'm looking at all these other places on my list here, and I noticed that every one of them that I have tried to find information for, the phone number listed on site, because I went through Google Maps and searched, got to the site's apartment management office, and every one of them that had a sign out that showed a phone number, the phone number did not match the phone number on the listing. So is it all scams? Or did just someone be foolish and say, well, I'm not going to use the office number, I'm going to use my number or whatever, not thinking that is going, like yesterday I called 2 different places, 2 different phone numbers, went to voicemail. It was not even closing time, but maybe people took off because it was the 5th of July, long weekend, I guess. And it was the exact same woman, the exact same message. Different phone number, different area code. That just riles up my anxiety. I'm like, great. Are these scams too? So I found out the phone numbers listed on site, and they're not the same. So again, anxiety is a type of fear. Whether you're nervous or anxious or stressed, that's all related to fear. And because I've got so many things, negative things going on in my life right now, it's hard right now handling this. And I was reading this book, No Place to Hide, which relays the experiences of an American neurosurgeon who was sent to Iraq to work in a special facility there, which was the main hospital facility in Iraq, and it was being mortared every day by the Islamic extremists that didn't want America there. I mean, I can understand that. It wasn't our country, and I don't think we got invited to be there either. But at the same time, and I was reading this, and I was like, wow, man, totally different experiences. But he was describing how he was feeling, and I was like, yeah, I get it. You want to cry, you're exhausted, even though you've not got a good reason to be exhausted. In that case, honestly, there were other things that were, like he wouldn't necessarily get to eat when he needed to eat. He wouldn't necessarily get to go to the bathroom when he needed to go to the bathroom. He wouldn't necessarily feel safe because even though they had these concrete facilities that were reinforced and most of the mortars that were being lobbed at them never went off because they were really old and cruddy. But still, reading his words, Dr. Warren's words, I was like, wow. Absolutely, completely different experience from mine. Much more, infinitely more dangerous than the situation that I'm in. And yet, he's got anxiety too. I wanted you to understand that. Because some people who have not experienced depression don't understand depression. My dad didn't understand it because he'd always been a happy guy until one day he had 3 days of intense sadness. And then he called me up and he said, I'm sorry. Because he finally understood. I had a professor who said, in a personal meeting with me, because I was struggling in his class, it was not because I couldn't do the programming, it was because of anxiety and depression. He said, I don't believe in depression. I wanted to say to him, well, step into my shoes, sir, and you will. People who haven't experienced things don't necessarily disbelieve. They just don't have personal understanding of it. So when you don't have personal understanding of something, it's hard to understand it just using your intellect. But you can. But you have to have the compassion to want to try. So the next time somebody tells you they're freaked out by spiders, don't laugh. Or they're terrified of heights. Or they have a hard time leaving their home every day because they're afraid they're going to be attacked. And may or may not ever have been attacked. Or they feel like they're being crushed by depression, or they feel like every time they're around people that they're becoming more and more frightened and struggling to just maintain composure until they can get out of there, or anything else. Instead of saying, that's BS, there's no such thing, you're lying, you're just looking for sympathy, I suggest you shut up and listen and instead try to understand what they're going through. And don't ask questions in a way like an interrogation or like, oh, you're so dumb, or some kind of negative tone of voice. Do it in a careful, at least neutral, if not concerned way, so that they don't feel unheard, so that they will help you to understand. Because mental health problems are everywhere, and whether it's anger problems or bipolar or ADHD or depression or schizophrenia or megalomania, monomania, narcissism, psychopathy, which is actually called antisocial personality disorder. Psychopathy is not an official diagnosis, and neither is sociopathy, whatever. All those things, there's so many of them, and if you don't take the time to try to understand, to try to appreciate, to try to be compassionate, you will always put others at a disadvantage through your insensitivity and selfishness. And you will always hurt people, quite frankly. And I know there are some people out there that don't care. I'm not talking to them because they don't care. But trust me when I say, and I can already feel the stress coming on here. I'm already feeling kind of tired. But trust me when I say that there are lots of different kinds of mental illness. Most people have more than one type of mental illness. Could be a small one, could be a big one. Who knows? But try to be compassionate and learn, understand, appreciate, help people. And when your family member is freaking out, just give them the time they need. And don't criticize. Just give them an ear to listen to you, to what they're going through. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.